Hello, Formula One fans, and welcome back to F1 in Focus. Today, we'll be talking about the Austria Grand Prix. And of course, we are the only Formula One podcast where a Dutch and an Englishman can very much get along in the world of Formula One. My name is John, and I'll be doing this show with my dear friend and the man with the best hair in the business. It's none other than James Hazel.
Hello, how are you doing?
I'm doing quite all right. I got a bit of a deja vu feeling, but that's all right. Whenever you're in a hurry, nothing works. I feel very much like a Mercedes is. I shouldn't make that joke, but it's true though. We'll talk about that in a moment though. Yeah. James, it feels like we discussed this topic before, but shall we just start with the sprint race in Austria?
Yeah, let's.
I think it was an awesome race. Good start to finish. Great driving by Charles as well at the start of the race. Overtook Max, actually. Fighting all along. Good camera direction. Anything you want to add on that?
Not really. It was a good race. I think the new format helps because there's less of that, like, if you lose out, you lose out big time. Because obviously the sprint's not setting the grid now. I think the rain or the wet weather helped, definitely. The
lack of DRS made for some good overtakes on original spots as well.
Just the weather in general, really, because rain's always like considered the great equalizer, isn't it? And it kind of brings the cars kind of not quite down to a level playing field, but because it slows the action down, it kind of it just kind of level things out for all the drivers a little bit. And obviously the drivers that are good in the wet have an opportunity to shine, even in a car that might otherwise not really be great. So, yeah.
Definitely. Should we talk about Checo or leave?
The first lap, first corner.
Well, first corner, but also I was talking about disqualifying on Friday.
Oh, yeah. Not really any excuse for that, is there? He's fourth race in a row missing Q3, I believe.
Could be the third race in a row he missed that, I think.
Yeah. And, I suppose, no, this is for the main race as well, isn't it? This isn't just for the sprint. What was I going to say about that? Yeah, I saw a fun graphic that showed all the people that have out-qualified him so far this year. And it included Hulkenberg and I think Albon and maybe Ocon. I can't remember. There was like 3 or 4 midfield drivers that had out-qualified Perez over the course of the season so far, which, doesn't look great when he's driving the Red Bull.
No, indeed. Have to admit, though, that you talk about Hulkenberg, that was some qualifying by him.
That was amazing. That's fantastic. Yeah. He had a solid drive as well. He kept Checo at bay for a while, but he was obviously driving that car a little bit too hard, really, for the tyres, for keeping the tyres going for the whole race at least.
Yeah, during Sunday they had a power engine failure, I think, as well.
Yeah.
So definitely one of the losers of the weekend. Totally the Haas though, but they got some points on Saturday, so it was good.
If the technical fault's not his. His racing overall over the weekend was just really solid.
True, definitely true. So Max winning the sprint after qualifying in a narrow pole, getting a much more margin for Sunday's race though in already, or for the qualifying, got a much bigger margin in there. Ferrari is back. Shall we start with that statement?
They looked pretty good at Canada, yeah, except obviously they didn't qualify great, but then the race pace was pretty decent. So they could have been pretty good in Canada if it wasn't for that. And obviously there was the slightly different take on the strategy that they took in Canada, which seemed to pay off for them as well.
Do you think Ferrari should have gone in under the safety car as they did, or was it way too early? Because that was my feeling, honestly.
I think it was the right call. I think it was the right call for Leclerc. I think they should have split the strategy with Sainz, and Sainz should have stayed out.
Oh, they messed up Sainz race by doing it now.
Exactly, only because they were too close for the double stack, and they didn't pull Lando and back the pack up and make some gap and then take a huge penalty for it. But he suffered anyway because he was so close to Leclerc that they effectively double stack, lose a bit of time. And by the time he comes out, he's behind
George, I'd say.
Was he that far back? He was definitely behind Hamilton, wasn't he? And yeah, it might have been George as well. Yeah. But then Sainz had probably one of the best races for him so far this season, I think, with the exception of the track limits, which, well, I'm sure we'll be covering that in depth.
We will in a moment.
Yeah, but his driving and his racing was it was brilliant. Yeah, that's that like middle stint when he'd suffered through the penalties. Not the penalties, through the pit stops. Found himself a little bit further back than he would have hoped, and then had to fight his way through the pack a little bit. It was just really solid driving from him. Leclerc was kind of invisible most of the race. He was just kind of in no man's land. But second place for Ferrari, 800th podium. I think it was 800th, wasn't it?
Yeah, 100% true.
Yeah. Yeah, really, really good.
Definitely. Overall, I think Ferrari brought some good upgrades, fought really well. I was indecisive about the pit stops. But then again, second place is pretty good. Although, maybe we should talk about the other one. Failed during qualifying. You were correct on the fourth consecutive race, not making Q3. But Checo came in third in the race.
Yeah. I think that was a really good drive from him, to be honest. And I think if he'd qualified correctly, which would be minimum top four for him, yeah, it's really should be qualifying second or third, because I think Perez versus Leclerc, even with Leclerc in a Ferrari, is probably a tough call for him, because over a single lap in qualifying, Leclerc's managing to kind of quite often be on Verstappen's pace, as he was this weekend. I think Perez trying to match that is maybe a little bit too much to ask. But even if he qualified third or fourth, like, he race pace should have been the Ferraris very easily, and probably prevented Max from being able to pit and get his fastest lap.
Well, that's the other one though. I said it I said before, is Max getting cocky or is he just so confident? Because on 2 laps to go, you have a 24-second gap, I think.
It's 24, 25, yeah, something like that.
Says, I actually want to get the fastest lap of Sergio. No argument, like a little bit of an argument. I don't think there's a need, Max. And they're like, yeah, well, come in.
Yeah, well, they originally suggested that he cools his tyres for a lap and then does it on the same tyres. And he says, no, I want a box. And they're like, we don't think it's worth the risk. And he says, well, I'm 25 seconds in front, so let's just do it. And they're like, okay, we'll do it.
He comes out 3.5 seconds in front of Leclerc, warms his freaking tires on the straight, probably like really weaving over the straight, with Leclerc being 2 seconds behind him at that moment. Starts that lap with going slow, white in the first corner, get a good entry to the first lap, and ends the race on 5 seconds advantage. So pulls away lead. 3 seconds in one lap as well. There's dominance. This felt like a total knockout to the rest of the field. This was the team performing optimally, sticking to the strategies, being confident, no argument, just do it, else Max won't be satisfied, and he does it as well.
Yeah.
I think that was the most impressive drive I've seen from him for a while. I've seen some proper amazing drives, right? Not only consistent in the race, if you look at the lap times, it's like insanely stable as well, like he's an autopilot. But doing that in the last moment, I think that was really impressive. It's not something I've seen very often in Formula One. I think that's why I know I sound like a Max fanboy, right? But we talked about dominance, how it can be boring. This was the opposite of boring. This is highlighting your power, your confidence, your strength, I think.
Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of this comes about from the fact that, I mean, Max is driving at another level, and the car is also clearly at another level compared to the majority of the field. I think Max being able to do that was partly just down to Perez. If Perez had qualified where he should have qualified and he had the race that he should have had, Max wouldn't be in a position to do that. So this is kind of Perez's fault in a way. He's like,
true.
He loses his fastest lap for his own fault of not making it through into Q3 and not keeping Max honest in any way. Because whilst Max has got, between a 20 and 30 second advantage over the next fastest car at basically any circuit at this point, I don't think he has that advantage over Perez. He maybe has like a 15 or 20 second advantage throughout a race, but I don't think he's got 20 to 30 seconds or enough to do that pit stop. I don't think he'd risk it with Perez. So yeah, it basically just took full advantage of the situation that was given to him. Which
but it could be very, like, I was sitting in a chat texting and stuff. We weren't doing that this weekend, but was in a Discord group, and they said like, "This is stupid. Why does he do it? Why take the risk? It's just 1 point difference." No, now it's actually 2 point difference, right? If you think about
he's taken a point from one person and given it to himself instead. So it's a 2 point swing. I think it's
not that he needs it with 80 points.
Well, no, he doesn't need it at all. I mean,
but,
he could. I mean, at what point in the season do we get to where he could finish second every race behind Perez winning every race, and he still wins because he's pulling that sort of lead at the moment. But yeah, what I was going to say is that I don't think it's stupid, but
I think it's confidence.
It's definitely confidence. It does put a lot of pressure on a lot of people though, because a pit stop's not performed by one person, and it's not performed by Max Verstappen. It's performed by a team, and you get one mistake with the wheel gun or slip with the wheel or whatever, and you lose a couple of seconds. I mean, in this case, he probably still would have passed Leclerc and would have won. He might not have got his fastest lap, but he probably still would have won. But it potentially opens him up to problems. It didn't pan out that way, so he doesn't need to worry about it.
2.1 second pit stop.
Yeah. I think in the past, like Mercedes probably had the opportunity to do this sort of thing, but they never did. I remember
they never did. No.
Well, there was no point to play for either back then. So
that is also true, actually. Yeah.
So they didn't really need to, but they've finished races like 30 seconds ahead of the field, and they've not done anything with that time because I remember them. I'm trying to think when it was. I remember a few races where they've like made calls like this, where it's like, should we just get some fresh tyres on to guarantee we get to the end, and they don't want to risk it.
I remember a race with Coulthard and Hocking actually coming in with one and two in Austria as well, I think, and putting the whole field on one lap to number 3. So it did happen. the gaps. I saw someone saying this is the biggest gap ever or something, but no, there were actually leads.
No, definitely
for the McLaren Mercedes of the old days, and the Mercedes were just putting everyone on the lap. So not even that much different. But yeah, I think I found that impressive. I mean, it could have it almost felt like arrogance, but it also showed a total winner's mentality from Max. Like every point counts. Just make it count. Let's go for it, and just want to win it all now.
Yeah.
Galore seemed happy though by the win.
Yeah, he did. And the other thing as well is it's kind of risk free for him, because even if it had gone catastrophically wrong, like he would be annoyed, the team would be annoyed, but it's not going to impact the championship at this point. I don't think it might. It might give Perez a confidence boost if, let's say for example, they don't get the wheel on properly, and he drives out in an unsafe release, and he has to stop the car and just retire from the race. It's not it's 25 points less for the championship, but it's not going to affect him winning the championship, I don't think. So,
no. Although I've checked, and 1 in 100 pit stops from Red Bull goes south, and not even catastrophic, but takes long.
Yeah.
So 1% chance it goes.
Yeah, the chances are so slim of it happening. Yeah, and that goes for almost any team. Like some teams have, they might have like a 3-second pit stop rather than a 2.5 second, but that's kind of minimal, really, when you've got that sort of lead. And we very rarely see things where wheels not being put on properly and stuff like that anymore. Like that seemed to be semi-frequent, like 5 years plus ago, but doesn't really seem to happen now.
Yeah, they really are the best of the best these days, right? James, you get 2 minutes to talk about Lando.
Oh, yeah.
That was a heck of a weekend he had.
Yeah, he had a really solid race. Decent qualifying, really good race. Didn't get caught out by the track limits thing. I was a little bit curious about that. I was really expecting when they reviewed them that he was going to get a penalty as well. Although that goes for a couple of drivers that didn't get penalties, but anyway, we're probably going to cover penalties very soon.
That's why we need to get in the next 20 minutes or so.
But yeah, his race was really good. That McLaren, I mean, he's got the upgrades that Piastri didn't have on his car, so it's unfair to look at what Lando did this weekend compared to Oscar. But if you look at where they were or where he is, well, actually, you can make that comparison just to look at how far they've jumped up. You can't really look at it and say Piastri didn't do very well because he's effectively driving the old spec car. But it does show that they've made pretty good progress.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I think they've got more parts coming for Silverstone as well as
a new
Piastri getting the full upgrades as well. So that's going to be quite interesting, I think. I mean, I know a couple of teams, well, more than a couple of teams are bringing upgrades to Silverstone, but yeah, that kind of shuffles the pecking order a little bit. And maybe this makes McLaren the fourth fastest car on the grid, which I'm still clinging on to from my predictions in.
My Alpine prediction, I don't think it will hold on. So, but impressive. I'm thoroughly impressed. I'm also impressed by another great livery which I put into Silverstone.
I can't wait to see this in the flesh. Well, on the TV at least, yeah.
Exactly, yeah. It looks really nice.
Yeah, the Google
first time we see something shiny back on cars as well. So
yeah,
I'm here for the ride. I don't know if it's slow because of it's being shiny.
I saw a member of the team had said. Speaking of that, a member of the team had said that well, first of all, they wanted to keep the orange or papaya because that's like their colour at the moment. But they'd said they would have liked more chrome. Whether it could have happened or not, I don't know. But they didn't because of the weight, and it would have impacted performance.
Nevertheless, it does look brilliant, though. Let's hope McLaren's back, because I think, especially when you look at the short tracks in Austria, we'll get Hungary, of course, in a couple of weeks as well. The gaps between like not Max and everyone else were tiny, really tiny. And we saw that in the raining fight. It's been just swapping positions, someone taking 3 cars in one lap, being overtaken 2 laps later when the tires drop off a little bit. I really enjoyed this weekend, and it's so great to see not the lead fight, because there's no lead fight, but everything else just being very compact. Ferraris fighting with each other. Yeah. Austin's dropping back slightly after this weekend. Mercedes, well, this wasn't their best weekend, so maybe not discuss that, but are still in the mix. McLaren coming back up from there. Alpine having some good races. Haas and with all due respect, Alfa Romeo, not sure what they are doing. But,
no. I think the only caveat to this is that obviously this was a sprint weekend and there was only one practice session. Like I think that's probably part of the reason for Mercedes being
they did a Red Bull. I said this weekend they do a Red Bull. Normally Red Bull misses the first practice or do something wrong there. and therefore they are not set up for a great weekend. I think that's exactly what happened to Mercedes as well.
Yeah. I mean, Lewis seems to be a little bit cursed with sprint races other than that one Brazil race. But I mean, that was slightly different only because he got disqualified from qualifying, and that's something like that happening to him, an injustice or whatever, however he sees it, usually lights a fire under him. But that didn't seem to happen this weekend with the track limits thing. He just seemed to kind of wallow in it a bit and just get in his own head, I think. But
let's jump into track limits, James.
Yeah.
But before we actually talk about track limits, we've experienced these track limits as well ourselves, haven't we? Over the past couple of weeks.
Yeah, we were supposed to do a podcast last week about this, but we had to postpone for various reasons. But so we missed that, but we can cover that now.
Let's cover that for a second. So instead of predicting who would win and who gets on the podium, which was kind of boring, we decided to just get ourselves to racing sims and to 2 times the new Formula 1 game. Not sponsored, by the way, but we're always open for sponsorship. So, hey, check it out. But that's a different question, or different topic. And we said, okay, let's take the track which we're about to go into. Let's drive as many laps as we can. And let's record our fastest lap and compare it to each other.
Yeah, we did. Yeah.
So I don't know how many laps I did, but it must have been at least like 100, 150 laps of Austria over 2 weeks, something.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And still haven't won this, but hey.
I thought I had an advantage just because I felt like I'd maybe done more laps than you, but based on what you've just said, maybe not. Maybe
I'm just slow.
Fairly similar. You say slow, we're still really close.
We had a time until you beat me, so I'll give your time really soon, right?
Yeah. Okay.
But we had a moment on Wednesday evening where your time was 104.880. Yeah. And my time was 104.888.
Yeah, we were close.
So 8,000 difference between laps. We're like, can't even imagine that. In the end, though, you've won, and we'll put on the lap. So when you're watching this on YouTube, we'll try to get both laps recording next to each other so you can see the difference. But I got my final time was 104.888, and your final time was 104.692. So about 1.9 tenths something.
Yeah, close to 2 tenths. Yeah.
So well done, GG to you.
Thank you.
I can't see turn 9 into 10, Spielberg. You go wide, you go a little bit too fast, and you go over the limit. I've had happen that I think at least 40 times where I got the fastest time and I hit the curb a little bit too wide, and now the time has got deleted. Okay, let's try again. The next one doesn't count because you take all the speed with you, and that's exactly what happened this weekend as well. In qualifying, in practices, everywhere in the race.
Yeah.
And honestly, James, if the track limits these are the rules, you can't pass the white line with 4 tires, I think that's fine. Good rule. If you put some gravel next to the track, the rule will set itself. If you pass the line, don't set the track limits. If you go wide, you're done.
Yeah.
Friday, it happened a lot. And there was a statement being made. Okay, you know what we'll do? We'll make the curb smaller. So we'll make it smaller, which makes it easier to do. They didn't change that curb at all. They didn't change it for the actual Saturday. So if you go over the white lines, Max said it as well during qualifying on Friday, you get your lap time deleted. The main issue is this happens so often that the drivers don't know if they did it a couple of laps later, actually. So you can do it in lap 1, think you got a good time. 2 laps later, they say, hey, you were actually just like a half an inch over the line. It gets deleted. And now it's only, okay, but now I've got 30 seconds left on the qualifying. I'm done.
Yeah, that was the problem with qualifying, is that it was 4 minutes of times passed during a session, and their time suddenly gets deleted off the board. And that's unfair, I think, because having that info immediately affects their qualifying runs and how they kind of plot out that session.
Yeah.
And if they think, oh, we're okay,
you go in, you switch tires.
Yeah.
And suddenly you're done.
Yeah. So I think I think in a scenario like that where lap times are being deleted, track limits are very easy. Just because, I mean, the problem with exit of turn 9 and exit of turn 10 is that there's such fast corners, and 10 especially, the track kind of goes wide and they go wide, but it also it's almost like they're taking a 90-degree turn. I mean, I don't know how many degrees the turn is, but it's like they're taking a turn, but the turn's actually slightly tighter than that. It kind of
feels like an 85-degree corner.
Yeah, it almost comes back in a little bit further than it actually is. So they sort of drift wide.
And it goes down, right?
Yeah.
But the main issue is the cars are just sort of heavy. So when you take a little bit too much speed and you turn right, the car automatically would drift a little bit to the left.
Yeah.
So if you take a little bit of overspeed or you have a little bit more fuel than you practice with, it's very easy to go wide.
Yeah.
My main issue is, like I said, main issue is that you can't see it. If you drive the car, you can't see it because the wheels are so high this year or in the last year as well that you can't really see the line if you drive in.
Yep.
You can't feel it either because there's no difference because it's already on the run of either. And you see it way too late once it's called to do so. There's a couple of things I want to discuss here. We saw Max getting one lap, cutting it off. Then he put in all the other qualifying session. He put in a banker lap first.
Yeah.
Just so one lap, take it a little bit slower, a little bit cautious to get a time on the boards. And then the next time, go fast, try to give it all. We saw Sergio we saw Leclerc do that really well. We saw Sainz doing it well. Lewis doing it really well. We saw Hülkenberg not giving anything, but just going. Ended up doing well. But Checo had 4 attempts. Still didn't fill. So
yeah,
I think, yes, the track should have been, there should be a hard limit there, aka gravel. Yes, it should be registered right away. You should get a notification like we do on the sim. We hit the line that says, doesn't count. Like, okay, that makes sense. Yeah. But 3, just make a bank a length if you're driving a fast car. Make sure you be a little bit more cautious because there were a couple of cars that didn't get anything during the race. And that was the drivers who took it into account. And you saw the top speed being down a couple of kph. You saw the last sectors being a little bit slower than everyone else. But overall, if it costs you 5 or 10 or 30 seconds if you're Ocon, then why not do a little bit more safer?
Yeah.
So there's a lot to discuss about track limits. So I think faster registration has to be done. But if there's 90 plus people going over the line in one lap, it's really hard to register fast. So it's a track issue as well. And 2, come on, there's also a little bit of skill involved, I think.
Yeah. I think...
And Trent.
So the how long it takes to register a lap has been exceeding track limits is a massive problem. And the thing is, Formula One as a sport has said, okay, these are the rules now. You've got to be within the white lines, because previously it was a bit hit and miss depending on the circuit. Like, in previous races at Austria, they've said it's fine to do that. Mm-hmm. And often they'd say, like, well, actually, and this was certainly a thing during the Charlie Whiting era. And he'd say, like, well, we don't need to enforce track limits here because we think that if they exceed track limits there, they're actually going slower and it compromises their lap time. But then every driver exceeds track limits at that spot. Now, if every driver's doing it, it's got to be fast. Like, they don't do it because it's slow. They do it because it's fast. So this is kind of why this all came about, I think, because it was very hit and miss between race weekends, how and what was being enforced. It was confusing as a viewer, especially a casual viewer, who's maybe not tuning into every
this is way better
session. Oh, it's a lot better. And I am 100% behind enforcing track limits and enforcing them fully every circuit. White line's your boundary. That's it. If you cross it, you're under investigation, or you potentially lose lap time or take a penalty if you do it too many times. Whatever, that's fine. But if you're going to say that this is what we're going to do, then you need to have a procedure in place to actually enforce those rules. I mean, that's like, I'm going to struggle with this because I'm not a football fan.
Oh, here we go.
But this is like trying to enforce offside or something, but then not having a referee or a camera system to like properly monitor.
It took 100 years in football to get that fixed. So,
well, yeah, but but I don't. Well, maybe that's not the best analogy then. But my biggest problem with this is that we've had 2 race weekends at least so far this year, where we have the wall cam that tells us exactly how far away the wheel is from the wall. 1 centimeter away, 2 centimeters away, whatever. Great, that's cool. Why can't we just use something like that for the white line?
Because there's no wall.
Well, no, but put some point or use some sort of camera system that can measure the white line and measure the car crossing it.
So I don't disagree on you there, but in Canada we have a wall of champions. Yeah. Nobody touched it this year.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Why not? Yeah. Because it hurts.
Yeah, they can drive within the boundaries of the track. Because if they go out of bounds, they're hitting a brick wall, or no brick wall, a concrete wall.
Yeah. So get a wall fixed there. Get the gravel next to the track, and you solve everything. But nah.
I wonder. I mean, I don't know for certain if it would help or not. But the almost like miniature sausage curb that runs along the track and around the outside of the track at turn 1 and turn 3 at the top of the hill. I do wonder, do those slow a car down enough if they go over those?
Well, you just get launched in the air and probably, I would say something else, but it's
the much smaller ones that kind of, rather than the ones that they used to put on the inside of corners to stop people cutting corners. At Austria, there's these like quite small ones that the cars can go over or can just kind of get a wheel on, and they sometimes seem to use that to almost like lean the car on it. Whether those would work at those corners, I don't know, but maybe that's a solution. The other thing to think about as well, though, is how does it impact other categories? And I don't know which motorcycle events race there and whether those curbs would be bad for motorcyclists, especially if they're sliding down the ground and then they hit one of these curbs. It's things like that, but yeah, they've got to find a way to be able to see these real time and give out penalties in a timely manner. Because qualifying, obviously, people lost times on the board, minutes later, which affected how their session would run. And then, if we want to start talking about it in the race, Ocon, you just mentioned, he didn't get a single warning during the race. He commented on the radio. His engineer commented on the radio like it was loads of penalties. Yeah, but we didn't get one. Yeah, well done, you didn't get any. And then he gets what?
13 out of bounds in total.
I was going to say 12 minimum to be able to get a 30-second penalty or whatever it was total. If he knew about those during the race, he would have adjusted his driving style. He wouldn't have got 30 seconds worth of penalties. And I think that's...
I sure hope so. Yeah.
You hope so. But if you can't apply like... You can't start giving warnings and penalties to some drivers and then completely ignoring others and then look at them after the fact and give those sorts of penalties, because whilst they're racing, if they hit 3 penalties in a 5 second or 3 track limits and get the black and white flag, they're going to be taking it a lot more cautiously. And if they happen to get one more and they get a 5-second penalty, they're going to be taking it even more cautiously because they run the risk of getting the 10-second penalty. I mean, Lewis and Sainz, they'd already had their 5 seconds, and some other drivers, they've not really got any excuse for ending up with a 10-second penalty, because they got fair warning during the race, and that's on them. But for someone like Ocon, who's kind of, everyone's memeing about him at the moment because he always, 30 seconds worth of penalties. And
which layout did he drive for Austria?
Yeah, which layout did he drive? Yeah, is he still driving the race right now and all this sort of stuff? Like, yeah, it's funny, but it's not fair because he would have adjusted if he'd known.
Definitely. But the thing is, I think the worst experience of this is for the casual fans.
Yep.
because we follow Formula One news, so we go the race ends, and we say, okay, Aston Martin is 7th and 9th or something, 7th and 11th. Norris is 5th, right? Lewis is 4th. All looks well. And then 5 hours later, they're like, hey, immediately after the race, Aston Martin says, hey, we're going to protest the results because we don't think this happened fairly. And there's a lot of people going out of bounds and didn't get penalized for it. They actually handed in proof. So they were paying more attention than actually the stewards were.
Yeah.
They addressed it. All fair and square. That's what you can do, right? But it took them 5 hours to come to the conclusion because there's so many backlog on the checks.
Yeah.
And then like 5 hours later, they changed the results of the race.
Yeah.
Lewis dropped back, Sainz dropped back. Ocon fell off the grid. We're still driving, like you said. We don't know what happened to Ocon. But it's Norris suddenly got 4th, right? Like, okay, so I got a 4th place. That's actually pretty cool. That can't happen. That just can't happen. I think then everyone loses. The casual fan loses. The hardcore fan loses. The drivers lose. The people on track lose. They have no idea where they're watching. There's no way of tracking it either because you used to have statistics on screen which say, okay, this one's being investigated. Got a little orange thing next to them, right?
Yeah.
Didn't see any of them.
No, any. That's another point that I wanted to raise. That I did think about as I was watching the race, and I thought that needs to be discussed. Is there's no visual clues as to what's happening. Even, I mean, people being investigated, like maybe that doesn't need a some sort of indicator or something on the screen.
We have an indicator for that.
We do.
Orange.
If it's not there, it's not the end of the world. But if somebody's got penalty, if someone's got 5-second penalty to serve,
we need +5 on it.
That I think that needs some sort of marker next to their name so that we know, because when it comes to pit stops, that's going to affect their pit stops, and that when you think about that, it's going to affect where they're going to come out, or would affect where they're going to come out. Not guaranteed.
Or when they get a black and white flag, put a black and white flag next to their name.
Exactly. Yeah.
So we know Lewis is now being cautioned, and then when the camera director switches to Lewis, you know why he switched to Lewis, because he might cross the line and you might get a penalty, which makes for an even better story to direct.
Yeah.
I mean, we don't have we only direct a podcast, but we don't really need to tell everyone that. And I think for the hardcore fans, it was really hard to follow. For the FIA, they couldn't follow. Stewards couldn't follow. Everyone except Aston Martin couldn't follow it. Props from Aston Martin. Some people say that's not fair they did that. I think it's 100% fair they did that.
It's within the rules, so it's fair,
yeah. I just think it makes for a lousy experience, and that leaves a sour taste in because this weekend had everything: proper driving, close combat, spectacle, like proper performances on top. Amazing qualifying. We finally got a good sprint, and it had everything: changing weathers, good crowds, great race direction. Just one big marker on this weekend.
And that is just a continual problem with Formula One, unfortunately, is that every time they start to do something right, there's something else that they then get wrong, or something new crops up that they get wrong. And this isn't really something new. I mean, we've had track limits as a problem at other circuits before, but obviously not to this extent. But how do they not anticipate this at this circuit?
It's not that it never happened. And like we said, we had the exact same thing when actually practicing on the sims.
Yeah.
This wasn't a hard one to figure out.
It's the nature of turn 9 and 10. Like, they are super fast corners, and because they're almost
but Spain has a fast
single corner almost.
Spain has a fast corner now at the end.
Yeah, but it's
only one that sort of messed up there was Alonso this year, because there's gravel. You hit the gravel when you go wide.
Yeah,
you're done if you go too fast. I mean,
I think it's how close the corners are together as well, though, because I think in an ideal world, the Formula One drivers would just take that as a double apex one corner,
which I wouldn't even mind.
Yeah,
I'd rather have that and be clear about it, that's legal in that race.
Yeah,
delete the wide line and say, you know what, just make it fast. do IndyCar style. We don't care about lines.
Yeah.
If you can drive it, it's fine.
Yeah. They're trying to avoid scrubbing too much speed in turn 9. And then obviously try and carry as much speed through 10 as well. And I think turn 10, I think for them is probably a little bit easier than 9. But 10 also, Lando Norris commented on this on he did like a post qualifying interview, I think it was, because he was a little bit disappointed in the main qualifying. He qualified behind Sainz, and he thought he had maybe like another 10th or 2, and he could have pipped Sainz. And he said that he went just ever so slightly wide on turn 10, and turn 10, the corner cambers in quite significantly at the apex compared to further on around the corner, and that actually pulls the car around the corner. And he just missed that a little bit wide, and that kind of compromised his corner. And so even just little things like that, like if they don't get the turn in exactly right, get the corner exactly right, they could be doing the exact same speed 2 laps in a row, miss that corner slightly, and they're going off on track, or like exceeding track limits on the exit of 10 because of that.
Exactly, and that's the issue, because I know people say, well, there are drivers that didn't do it, but it was, I think, 2 drivers that didn't do it. Lando, maybe 3. Lando, Checo, and Max. The rest might actually already all have a penalty somewhere.
Leclerc didn't either, obviously.
Leclerc didn't either, so that's like that. But that's about it, right? And I think these guys were just a little bit safer. Yeah. But you have to consider this. It's not.
There was only 2 that didn't get any track limits issues.
That's
not a single warning. No, it was Russell and who was the other one?
That's a good question.
It might have been Zhou Guanyu.
Oh, yeah, but he was going so slow. He was just pushing the car around the corner. I can do it that way as well, though, right?
Yeah, I think I'm pretty certain. I'm not quite 100% certain, because I think Guanyu made a tweet commenting that he finished P2 in the race. It was a bit of a joke, because he didn't. I'm pretty sure it's him.
Yeah,
and
although
Russell.
all of us really were really slow.
Yeah.
They look fast, but they're actually so slow. If I were Alpha, I'd just make the car chromes to make them stand out more, because you're not putting any performances in that stand out. But yeah, I think one thing I'd say, though, I saw people saying it can't be that hard, not hitting everything in the lines, right? It's the fastest point of the circuit. It's a really fast circuit. It goes all the way down, so it has the weight pushing you down the corner.
Yeah.
It's a heavy car, so when you turn in, you get pushed to the left as well, so you get pushed towards the end of the corner.
Yeah.
And every single lap, your car gets just a little bit lighter. That means it turns in not even faster, but the moment you can brake feels differently every single lap.
Yeah.
You have to be on an extremely high level to do that every single lap. Take those options into consideration and never not hit the apex.
Yeah. It's just grip. I mean, the difference in grip just between...
And then there's the tires that also drop off.
Having a brand new set of tires, which are not brand new by the time you're on your hot lap, because you've got to do an out lap. And a used set of tires, so they might have done an out lap, a hot lap, an in lap, another out lap. And it's not a lot of laps on a single set of tires, and yet that difference in grip is significant. So even just doing, do a hot lap, do a cool down lap to recharge, do another hot lap. So you're doing 2 laps in a single, run out from being out of the pits. Even that has quite an impact on the amount of grip your car has. Certainly enough for these guys at this level to notice and to have to make these micro adjustments, like you said, the braking distance and the corner speed and things like that.
Definitely. Time's up, James. We've got to close this podcast. We did have some sending questions, but the most fun question will be parked for next time. It will start next time. It's all about defending. Andrew sent in, can you explain a little bit more about defending? What options are there? How can you defend if your car is slower? And why did Albon last time in Canada and also this week is really good at defending? I think that's a good topic to take a deep dive in for next show.
Yeah.
Next show, however, we'll take a little bit for because I'm actually going on holiday. I am definitely hoping to catch some Formula One, but I will probably be driving when Silverstone hits this weekend. Well, one of your favorite tracks, I think, not one of mine, because I suck at that track in the sim. We'll be back in August, I think, for the show as well. But in the meanwhile, just send James questions at F1 in Focus James, and of course at F1 in Focus Pod if you want to send us any questions. The next one will try to be more consistent, be there every week again. Maybe do a long one in between or take an extra show. We'll see about that.
Yeah.
But we'll be back after this, our summer break, which in this situation means we'll miss Silverstone and Hungary.
There's a race every weekend this month, I think, isn't there?
Yeah. We used to have
Austria. There's
we got Silverstone, we got Hungary.
Yeah. And then Spa. And then it's the break, I believe, after Spa, isn't it?
And then we go into Zandvoort. Then we go into Monza.
Yeah.
So, well, at least we're back to see Max win the championship.
Yeah.
Well, that's what it is, though. We have to end, James, unfortunately, on some sad news, though. Because we had a major incident in Spa this weekend.
Yeah.
So, what we can say about that? Did you watch it? Did you actually?
I've not seen. No, it's not the sort of thing I'm interested in seeing, to be honest.
No, I definitely. So Delano van het Hof, Dutch talent, passed away in Spa this weekend after another rainy race at Spa and another visibility issue, so to speak. We've talked about this before. We had cancelled race, we had stopped races. Eau Rouge is just very dangerous. We don't want to go into this discussion, but of course, our thoughts are with us. And I think the respect they paid during the race and start of the race was amazing. But it's always sad when a driver crashes and it ends up, in a horrible way. Let's put it like this. So let's hope, I could say there was a loss, but it's probably not the last. But it's always sad to hear it.
Absolutely, yeah.
Definitely. All right. On that sad news, we're going to end the show, James. See you in a couple of weeks.
Indeed, yeah.
Want to have a quick prediction for Silverstone? Lewis gone back?
Maybe
McLaren winning the race?
No. There's going to be a Brit on the podium, definitely. It's either... Well, it could be one of three. You got Lando, Lewis, or...
you get three. Pick one.
George. So, yeah, I'm sure we'll get a Brit on the podium.
Perfect. And then I will do the other way around. We'll get two Dutch. No.
There's no chance.
There's actually no chance now. No, it won't rain either, I think. So it will be Max, it will be Charles, and it will be Sainz.
Where's Perez?
Well, who knows? He's getting penalties. I think Perez is not good at Silverstone, unfortunately for him. Don't think that's one of his favorite tracks. So now this is a flowing track where you need steady laps every single lap, right? You can have one fast and not one by one. This is one lap, one track where if you're consistent in your build up and are able to save your tires a little bit, this goes a long way. And I think Checo is a little bit too inconsistent to perform consistently well on big tracks like this. Spa, Silverstone, can't really see that happening, if I'm quite honest. Maybe I'm totally wrong and he wins the race and I'll look like a fool. But then again, it will be 4 weeks, we do another show and nobody will remember. So.
Oh, yeah, everyone will forget. Now I'll make sure I remember.
I wasn't unsure you did. Okay, so James, let's keep practicing laps. We'll do the time trials. We'll do them for all the races that come up. So we still have a couple of to catch up with. And I'll see you after the summer, my friend.
Absolutely, yeah.
All right, see you later. Bye-bye.
See ya.